Good day, everyone. I'm Suzette Balkaran. I'm Senior Lecturer at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, the Maritime campus. I'm also the Energy Efficiency Advisor of MTCC Caribbean. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in today with our webinar Wednesdays. Today's session, we'll be focusing on the implementation, monitoring, reporting, and verification of Sulphur 2020 compliance. For those of you who joined in our last webinar, we discussed the promoting of the ratification and implementation of MARPOL Annex VI. And I would like to share a couple house rules before we start our session for this evening. So to facilitate smooth participation, we ask that you kindly pay attention to the following information. The microphones of all participants will be muted upon your entry to the webinar, as there are a considerable number of participants. We're asking that you place any questions or comments in the Zoom chat, and we will address them during the panel discussions. We ask also that you please type in your full name on the platform when you're logging in. Should your internet connection become unstable at any point in time, we will automatically attempt to reconnect you. You would actually probably be automatically rejoined into the meeting. Should you have any urgent issues, please feel free to send an email to our technical secretariat. Also, our webinar will be recorded and it will be available via our website. And last but not least, we will be taking a picture at the end of our webinar series. So we are asking that you will be available to put on your cameras at that point in time. We also ask that you feel free to share your ideas during this series. And with no further ado, I will be starting our session for today. So bringing our remarks, our welcome remarks for this session would be Ms. Vivian Rambarad Parasram. She's the Director and Head of MTCC Caribbean. Vivian is an attorney at law with over 20 years experience in maritime law, international environmental law, corporate governance, and commercial law. She has been affiliated with the University of Trinidad and Tobago since 2007 and joined the full-time faculty at the Maritime campus in 2008. During this time, she has developed degrees and courses that are specifically designed to fuel the development of the local and regional maritime industry. She's a course leader for a suite of maritime law courses, ranging from environmental protection to admiralty law. Prior to joining the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Vivian spent 9 years as a researcher, a principal investigator, and eventually an officer in charge of the legal and policy research program at the Institute of Marine Affairs. She has also spent 3 years in the business, energy, and tax practice area of the Lex Mundi law firm of Hamel-Spitz and Company. During this span of her career, Vivian has frequently and successfully managed major commercial and academic projects. Her primary interests of research include maritime border security, maritime surveillance, and determining methods for overcoming legal and institutional challenges to maritime regulatory reform in the Caribbean Commonwealth. Thank you. I would now hand over to Ms. Vivian.
Thank you, Suzette. I certainly didn't expect a long introduction, but thank you for that. So now I have to shorten my introduction. So welcome to all, and welcome to the second installment of MTCC Caribbean's Webinar Wednesdays. Today, as Suzette said, we are focusing on implementation, monitoring, reporting, and verification of Sulphur 2020. This webinar is part of our capacity building initiatives under the project funded by the European Union and implemented by the IMO, entitled Capacity Building for Climate Mitigation in the Shipping Industry. It is therefore my pleasure to welcome our distinguished speakers, Captain Sukhjit Singh, our program leader for maritime studies at UTT, and also he's the technical head of MTCC Caribbean, Ms. Jody Barrow, Secretary General of the Caribbean MOU on Port State Control, Captain Stephen Spence, joining us from the Maritime Authority of Jamaica, Mr. Thomas Robinson of the Department of Antigua's Marine Services and Merchant Shipping Department, and Mr. Sami Sarosh of viscous shipping. And of course, all of our attentive participants taking the time to join us in progressing this very important agenda. I hope that today's discussions will be fruitful, that we are all feel free to participate. And I would like to welcome our presenters and now hand back over to our distinguished moderator, Ms. Suzette Balkaran, who is also actually one of our graduates from the University of Trinidad and Tobago and has served us well, and we're so very happy to have her here on our faculty and now moderating this very important session. Thank you, Suzette.
Thank you. So, we all know that the year 2020 has been quite an eventful one, not only for the introduction of new normal to all of us due to COVID-19 pandemic, but also there has been some new normal operating conditions for the maritime shipping industry as well. January 1st, 2020 serves as a date to remember for the sulfur limits set for ships' fuel oil, attempting to reduce overall sulfur emissions from ships. Recalling that sulfur emission control areas have also had their new normal since 2015, 2020 has been a year of change for shipping globally, more so for vessels trading outside of these emission control areas. So reducing sulfur oxide emissions from ships will, of course, reduce air pollution and lead to a cleaner environment. The implementation, monitoring, reporting, and verification of Sulphur 2020 compliance involves many aspects and key players. Here to give us an insight on Sulphur Cap 2020, the journey so far, is none other than our very own Captain Sukhchit Singh. Captain Singh is an assistant professor with the Center for Maritime and Ocean Studies at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. As an applied researcher and buoyed by his Master of Science in International Management, Oil and Gas from the University of Liverpool and postgraduate diploma in Maritime Energy Management from the World Maritime University, he is involved in energy and safety management systems within maritime domain, seeking to provide innovative solutions and mitigating the emissions from ships and ports. He's also the Deputy Director and Technical Head of the Maritime Technology Corporation Center for the Caribbean, MTCC Caribbean. This role involves continuous research on the maritime trends and innovative solutions mitigating emissions from the ships and ports. With over 24 years of industry experience, his key areas of specialization include new building supervisions and trials, dry docks, initial surveys, development and implementation of safety management systems, and ship energy efficiency management plans. Welcome, Captain Singh.
Thank you, Suzette. I was trying to share my screen as decided. I'm having, I think. Can you see my screen now?
No, we're still not seeing it.
It's saying me I'm sharing screen, but just a moment. Why I'm not able to select?
Okay, we are seeing it.
Can you see it now, please?
Yes, we're seeing it.
Thank you so much. And I apologize for the initial hiccup. I did say in beginning that we might get something in between. Sorry about that. So thank you again, Suzette. I will try to accommodate still within first 15 minutes. I'll jump straight forward. So as the presentation is about the journey so far, so I will quickly see through it, right? Now the main type of bunker oil for ships is heavy fuel oil, as we all know, that derived as a residue from crude oil distillation. Crude oil contains sulfur, which following combustion in the ship's engine ends up in the, sulfur oxides end up in the exhaust, which is, we all know, are harmful to human health, causing respiratory symptoms, and then leading to other lung diseases. In atmosphere, SOx can lead to acid rain, which can harm crops, forests, aquatic species, and certainly the acidification of oceans. Now, if we also see here that the importance of limiting SOx emission was clearly on high priority of the industry and IMO as the regulatory body. And then if we see, therefore, the SOx emissions were introduced as early as you can see on the timeline. It was adopted under MARPOL Annex VI through the International Convention for Prevention of Pollution from Ships, which we commonly known as MARPOL Convention. And it set up the progressive and stricter regulations in order to control emissions from ships, including sulfur oxides and nitrous oxides. And again, the target was, as I said, to have benefits for both environment and human health. Now, as I mentioned, and you can see on the timeline, MARPOL Annex VI was first adopted in 1997 and entered into force 19th May 2005. It limited the main air pollutants contained in ship's exhaust, including SOx, which is our main concentration topic of today, and nitrous oxides. And it also prohibits deliberate emissions of ozone depleting substances. MARPOL Annex VI also regulated shipboard incineration and the emissions of volatile organic compounds from tankers. And if you see on the timeline, in 2005, MARPOL Annex VI Regulation 14 further restricted SOx emissions from ships by introducing a maximum sulfur content in marine fuel of 4.5% matter by mass. So that entered into force in 2000 when MARPOL Annex 6, which was adopted in 97, it entered into force in 2005, and the initial limit of 4.5% was established. However, in 2008, in 58th session of MEPC, amendments were proposed, and under this revised MARPOL Annex 6, the global sulfur cap was reduced initially to 3.5%, which then was 4.5%, and then to come into force by January 2012, and then progressively to 0.5% effective from 1st January 2020, which we saw at the beginning of this year. And this revised Annex 6 entered into force on 1st July 2010. Therefore, the date for 2020, the importance of this timeline, what I wanted to highlight was that date of 2020 was agreed in amendments adopted in 2008. So it's not any, there was a lot of time when this came in force, like 12 years back. And when those amendments were adopted, it was also agreed that a review should be undertaken not later than 2018 in order to assess whether sufficient compliant fuel oil would be available to meet the 2020 deadline or the target date. If not, the date could be deferred to 2025. So this planned review, which was there initially in the adopted requirements in 2008 and which came into force in 2010. So this initial review was conducted, and it did say that there is sufficient compliant fuel oil would be available to meet the fuel oil requirements in 2016. And a study was also done on the human health impacts of SOx emissions from ships, which was also submitted to MEPC in 2016 by Finland, which estimated that if by not reducing the SOx limit from ships in 2020, the air pollution from ships would contribute to more than 570,000 additional premature deaths worldwide between 2020 and 2025. So based on these inputs, clearly when IMO met in 2016 for their MEPC 70th session, they agreed not to shift the date of 1st January 2020 and they entered into force the date of the 0.5% global sulfur in marine fuel as a marine fuel cap. So we all familiar with that, the little bit history to the date of 1st January 2020. Now, vessel operators had three main alternatives available once it came into force. So either to switch to low sulfur fuel oils, right? Operators could choose to purchase low sulfur fuel or install remedial devices like scrubbers, which we also known as exhaust gas cleaning system technology, or switch on to non-oil based fuels like LNG or other alternatives. Now, each alternative of these three options offered a different set of potential costs to operators, although each can reduce sulfur emissions from exhaust to the extent below the mandatory requirements, providing the improvements in the air quality. Now, while making the decision, certainly the OPEX and CAPEX of each option weighed heavily, while stakeholders were selecting between the options in continually changing local and regional regulatory environment, because it is not only the IMO which was changing, because there were some regional requirements also in the picture which had an impact while the operators made a choice. We will look into each one of them individually. So if you can see now, it is the dollar metric ton for VLS, low sulfur fuel oil, and MGO and HFO price. Because it is important to consider in our journey so far for 2020, it was expected that new low sulfur regulations on shipping fuels will push the bunkering costs in this year, and it will disrupt the markets. But the new investments and blending from refiners, it combined the severe demand destruction because of the COVID-19, as we are aware, and it meant that low sulfur products have only risen. So this demand only rose modestly compared to HFO, making scrubber installations an expensive alternative so far, given it so far. And if you will see what has happened, actually, refiners, they delivered the low sulfur blend stocks to produce low sulfur fuel oil. They diverted the blend stocks, and low demand for gasoline also due to COVID. So COVID had an impact on this, which meant that the cracker feedstocks that would have gone to boost gasoline output, they were obviously delivered to low sulfur fuel oil or bunker fuel pool as blend stock instead of VGO, right? And which helped push up both the low sulfur fuel oil supply and obviously which was sufficient to meet the initial demand. Refiners also processing more high sulfur feedstocks. They primarily started using HSFO for expanded desulfurization capacity. For example, the US Gulf Coast refining system and Indian refining sector both increased the refining of HSFO to produce low sulfur fuel oil, absorbing. So basically, they absorbed the surplus of HSFO from Russian refining system and Middle East, and thus the focus on HSFO as a feedstock to produce low sulfur fuel oil was further compounded, especially in United States, by the OPEC cuts in the crude and then the sanctions on Venezuela, which led to the constraints on the the supply to the refineries, which reduced the supply of medium and heavy sour crudes, as we all know, right? However, despite falling storage capacity in preparation to IMO 2020, the storage capacity was prepared by refiners when compliance kicked in, few months prior to the compliance when it kicked in from October onwards coming to January. But still, we saw in January, as you can see, we began with a spike for low sulfur fuel oil prices, and there were premiums. But since then, the rest of the petroleum complex fuel oil markets, they weakened, and amid the demand, which had a lot of uncertainty related to it because of COVID-19 pandemic and other economic disruptions, that premium disappeared. And after an initial sharp rise at the beginning of the year, low sulfur marine fuel prices have softened. And as you can see, throughout February and March 2020, the spread in prices between low sulfur fuel oil and high sulfur fuel oil fell steeply. And this was within a gap of 2 months, more than 35 to 45% drops were experienced in low sulfur fuel oil. Now, looking at the premiums to HSFO from which were over $300 per ton in January, it dropped to $70 a ton by mid-June, which were well below expectations. The impact on demand from COVID-19 has had a significant effect as weaker global trade has reduced the demand for marine fuels generally. But if you see the other factors, they also contributed, and the most importantly was the refiners worldwide had been able to increase very low sulfur fuel oil as yields, as explained earlier, significantly by changing their blending practices and investing in more desulfurization capacity, right? So clearly this premium which we are seeing since the month of June within the range of $70 was not expected or foreseen by any industry player, right? So clearly, low sulfur fuel oil emerged as a preferred bunkering alternative to HSFO in compliance of the sulfur rather than MGO, because few analysts had forecast the MGO, but we didn't see any rise in MGO demand because of the sulfur cap. Then there were some other questions over quality of low sulfur oil, which was like flashpoint, sediment issues, other operational problems like filters, etc. And I'm sure we'll hear it about more from Captain Sen Gupta and Mr. Sarosh in the operational perspectives of the sulfur cap. For looking at the bigger picture for foreseeable future, low sulfur fuel oil will be the marine fuel of choice. But if we speak for future outlook, going into a long term for marine fuels and distillate price especially, I would say it is still muddled due to number of known and unknowns, which would include specifically to maritime sector, the growth of alternative fuels, especially LNG and LPG, methanol as bunker fuels, other technological breakthroughs, potential for cheaper scrubber technology, and a realistic price setting for carbon emissions. Because we saw already that we have the ETS discussed by EU already. They have adopted it, right? So it is important to connect, looking at other options of, I mean, at this stage, we will look at the other option, not switching to low sulfur fuel, but if we are looking at the second option of installing scrubbers, which we also know as exhaust gas cleaning systems, right? And the main basis for that was the price differential. Now, scrubber manufacturers in past had looked at the price differential or the spread of at least $100 per ton as the tipping point, where owners would make the decision in favor of scrubber, right? But that is well above the current spread of $70. And then there is upfront cost to scrubber, which would require additional fuel to operate, which makes vessels less efficient, because currently the efficiency of vessel is measured based on the useful work done by vessel against the total amount of fuel consumed, right? So these were the additional factors contributing to uptake of scrubbers, including the recent, I mean, during this year across the globe, we have the use of open loop scrubbers has been banned by many countries in their port limits. So these were the different factors which played in the decision between the scrubber and the going to the fuel, right? So we also saw during the last year, means this year so far coming in, because of the premium is ranging about between $70, and the refiners on the other end have been able to cut the cost to desulfurize the bunker fuel at about $50 a ton. So clearly, as of now, it is not in favor of scrubbers, right? So the scrubbers don't have a competitive advantage based on what is the market price for the two fuels at present. So this fall of premium spreads against the low sulfur fuel oil and heavy fuel oil has led to decisions not in favor of scrubbers. I'll share a few examples. Like we have been citing in the last year, I remember citing Scorpio tankers and bulkers as the main, where they were installing scrubbers, but they have delayed installing 19 scrubber retrofits until 2021. And similarly, their bulker division, 13 installations are on hold. Frontline delayed installation on 2 VLCCs because they estimated a cash impact of about $7.6 million in 2020 just because of these deferrals, right? So it clearly we need to see the numbers of the second option now. So if we look at the next slide, based on the data from DNV, by end of this year, about 16% of container ships representing 36% of container carrying capacity will have scrubbers installed, and same will be true for 15% of bulk carriers and 10% of tankers about. So overall, it is expected that 10 to 15% of maritime segment will have scrubbers, and this is anticipated to increase by 2025 up to maybe 25% of the total fleet. And BIMCO is reports very positively on the uptake of the scrubbers, right? So the low spread between low sulfur fuel oil and high sulfur fuel oil is a major influence, as we just discussed, right? So as the global lockdown eases the economic economies will pick up, and obviously post-pandemic we can see where trade would pick up and the prices will strengthen, leading to again some balance in favor of the scrubbers. But as we are discussing, there is an very interesting turn which has happened. As you can see on the slide, Maersk has installed scrubbers on board nearly 100 vessels. So they touched this mark on 28th October last week. And certainly this is a change of stand, as you would see that previously Maersk was not so inclined toward the scrubber technology, right? So I would say the important factor in this change is also the consideration along the restrictions on sulfur emissions, where IMO has pledged to reduce carbon emissions by 50% by 2050 when compared to 2008 levels. So it means it is important to consider what is happening at the regulatory framework at the IMO level also, right? So the as we see that recently European Union has voted to include maritime emissions in the emission trading system, which adds a carbon price to the cost of use. So this is currently around I think euro 25 euros per ton of CO2, but it is expected to rise steadily. And BP, for example, is working with a carbon price of 100 euros per ton CO2 equivalent in its planning for 2030. So this impact of switch clearly focuses to the carbon rather than just sulfur, to have far more impact on the marine fuel market than just the sulfur associated cost. And the another development in this is you can see this study, therefore it draws our attention not only to look at the sulfur content that was heavily what everybody was looking at when we reached 1st January 2020, but over the year in this development we can see that now attention has been drawn to comparison between the CO2 emission of the two main options, which is using low sulfur or using the scrubber technology, right? So as we see here, you can see the two phases for the life cycle emission, the production phase and operation phase. So the production phase of the low sulfur fuel oil pathway on the top, as you see, requires desulfurization of fuel in the refinery. Then you have the CO2 footprint of this desulfuring process in the refinery, which depends upon the layout of the refinery, the methodology used, and the blends which they use. I mean the feedstock they use to produce the low sulfur fuel. Hydro treatment certainly, or hydrocracking contributes to the CO2 emission. So certainly production phase has a contribution to the carbon footprint of the life cycle assessment of that fuel. For operation phase, there is not much seen because there is no change in CO2 emissions in the operational phase was assumed in this study because given that evidence suggests that energy density between the low sulfur fuel oil and the heavy fuel oil continues to be the same. The bottom pathway of the EGCS, exhaust gas cleaning systems, it used the same fuel as the reference scenario. In the operation phase, energy required to operate EGCS will consume more fuel, and then while the emissions associated to operate the EGCS result in additional CO2 emissions, as it will need some to operate the system itself. So if you see here now, if we compare the two, certainly there is an increase in footprint, right, between the two. So an EGS requires energy which is generated by engines running on the fuel oil and thus generate CO2. So it is found that there is expected 1.5 to 3% increase in CO2 footprint when we are using exhaust gas cleaning systems. And there can be anything between 1 to 20% increase in CO2 footprint if we are using the low sulfur fuel oil along the life cycle emissions. And now when the companies are making decisions based on the total CO2 footprint, it may change things in favor of the scrubber again, right? So I will quickly summarize this thing. So I'm sure we all remember the uncertainty last year accompanied with this paradigm shift, especially pre-COVID. New IMO 2020 was seen as a big paradigm shift when the 85% drop was expected in the sulfur, right? But we see so far that the supply of low sulfur fuel oil has proven more than adequate, while the call on the MGO, an expensive alternative, has been less than expected, which was analyzed last year. Then we also see that supply of other alternative fuels continues to be developed, like LNG, which is growing very fast, and it is expected that it will increase, especially in view of our targets for 2030 and 2050 as a sector. The scrubbing economics still continue to hang in the balance. It sees how economies would start or restart for 2021. And certainly, as I said, the life cycle assessment of the marine fuels is catching up, and we get to get our act together towards as we go closer to 2050 targets. And this will certainly changing the industry and regulatory perspectives on the options which they are making. Now, along with the journey so far, it was also reported that the parties in the international shipping industry were complying with new sulfur cap, but the disruption due to COVID has caused many enforcement challenges. For example, MCA UK, they had clearly announced that they will be suspending sulfur cap compliances as part of COVID-19 containment efforts. And such measures will certainly make it very difficult for anybody to accurately assess the complete impact of IMO 2020 on shippings and logistics, or its effectiveness towards improving the environment and human health. And with this contextualization, I think we have the ground set right to hear perspectives from various stakeholders in compliance with the enforcement. So thank you very much for your attention, and you can reach out us on the mentioned website or the email ID if you have any further questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Captain Singh. You provided such an informative insight into the sulfur limit across our timeframes. Thank you for hitting on the MARPOL Annex 6 requirements as well, the compliance options available, and giving us that status of where we are with Sulphur Cap 2020. So steering forward, moving along with our session, I would like for us to go on to the other session where we're speaking about port state perspectives. As we know, port state control involves the inspection of the foreign ships within the national ports. So in order to ensure compliance with requirements of international rules and regulations, there's need for a comprehensive approach to compliance, which could be facilitated through effective port state control. Here to provide some insight into port state perspectives is Mrs. Jody Munbaro. We have Ms. Jody Munbaro. She is currently the Secretary General of the Caribbean Memorandum of Understanding on Port State Control, holding this position since 2009. She previously served at the Ministry of Transport and Works, initially as a policy officer, then as a senior policy officer. Prior to that, she worked at the Port Authority of Jamaica as a special project officer, of executive coordinator for marine and aviation for the Honorable Minister of Transport. Her professional duties includes a committee member of the government of Jamaica's Air Policy Committee. She has also served on the board of the Aeronautical Telecommunications Limited. Mrs. Munbaro has been married since 2003, has 2 children. She has represented Jamaica regionally and internationally in Gulf since the age of 13. And 2011 was recognized by the Gulf Association, the Caribbean Gulf Association, with her very own trophy named in her honor, the Jody Munbaro Trophy. So I would like to welcome Ms. Jody Munbaro now to speak on port state perspectives.
Hi, thank you, Suzette. I hope everyone can hear me and you're seeing my presentation.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. So wonderful. I will go right into it. As Suzette outlined, the IMO defines port state control as inspection of foreign ships in national ports to verify the condition of the ship and its equipment, that they comply with the requirements of the international regulations, and that the ship is manned and operated in compliance with these rules. And of course, port state control not just only covers the IMO, but they also cover the ILO conventions as well with respect to seafarer welfare. With the CMOU, we came about in 1996. Originally signed by only 9 member states, and we're now up to 20 member states. We also have 2 associate member states, with Anguilla actually being approved at our annual meeting last week. And we have 3 observer states, and we continue to speak to them to try to get them on board as a part of our MOU. Our mission: to eliminate the operation of substandard ships in the region through a harmonized system of port state control. and our objectives to assist in securing compliance of ships with international conventions regarding safety of life at sea, SOLAS, security, prevention of maritime pollution, working and living conditions on board ships, and seafarer certification and qualifications. Responsibilities. In accordance with the provisions of the applicable conventions and as per section 1.2 of our MOU, member states conduct inspections of foreign ships in their ports. The port state control officers are therefore required to inspect vessels that enter their ports to ensure that the ILO and IMO conventions are properly enforced. And they do this through a tracking system. So we really try to look at the higher risk ships first and then look at the other ships that follow. Our relevant instruments, as you can see, there's listed here, and I've highlighted, of course, MARPOL as that is the matter that we're dealing with today. Continue with our relevant instruments here, and you'll also notice that we have two small vessel codes that we also oversee at the CMOU. So how about inspections? Well, so far, this is just a brief review of the last 7 years, and you can see with 2020, our figures are down tremendously, and these are actual figures from January to October. We are far below where we should be, but that is, of course, is expected with respect to COVID and the fact that many of our member states still have not even restarted any inspections. There are some that continue to do so once they are approved from the Ministry of Health in their respective territories that they can go on board and do their inspections, they do so. But we are way below as expected for 2020. However, we do see where it has started to uptick as more states come on board and start inspecting. So our major categories of deficiencies for 2019, fire safety measures, life-saving appliances, ship certificates and documents, and safety of navigation. And I must note that these are generally the top 4 throughout the years. With respect to MARPOL, this is for all annexes combined. We're at less than 5% of total deficiencies for the year, for the period. And the question you would ask is whether the ships are actually complying, or is there any other issue that causes such a low deficiency rate for MARPOL. So I'll get into that a little bit as we proceed. With respect to MARPOL, I've broken it down through the years by annex, and here we have Annex 6, and you can see that it is low compared to the other annexes of MARPOL. It's still fairly low. And once again, the totals for 2020 are only from January to October of this year. Once again, what are those Annex 6 deficiencies that we're seeing? Well, we're primarily seeing incinerator, including operations and operating manual. That one is the one that comes up more often, if you can see, between 2014 and 2020. As well, the loan deficiency that we've seen for the last 3 years, as you can see, is the same one with respect to the incinerator. Okay, with respect to how we've been dealing with MARPOL 2020 amendments, in 2019, the CMOU started to issue what we term the letter of information, where port state control officers would issue this when they went on board vessels. Other MOUs also did the same. And the matter was to try to prepare our vessels with respect to the 2020 amendments. So this basically advised them that as of that particular date, if the 2020 amendments were in effect, whether they would be complying or not, or just to bring the matters to their attention so that they would be aware and be prepared for the 2020 amendments. This was the letter that was sent out in 2019. So between 2019 and when we started in 2020, I can report that the SOLAS vessels are mostly compliant and aware, not of the upcoming, but of the amendments. Our smaller vessels, those that are under 500 GT, and these would only be applicable to vessels between 400 GT and 500 GT under the codes. Those were a concern because many of them were actually not aware of the amendments that were coming in place. And so they were not prepared for them. Unfortunately, as I indicated, we're not doing as many inspections for this year, so it's hard to judge how the performance possibly in the smaller vessels, whether it has improved or whether they're still having the same issues. So we really can't judge where we are with 2020 as yet, with MARPOL 2020, because we just haven't been doing enough inspections to come out with a true picture. I must note, however, that port state control guidelines for MARPOL Annex 6 were approved at our annual meeting last week, and these will be disseminated to our inspectors. Of course, it's late because our annual meeting had to be postponed. So we'll get this out to our officers as soon as possible. So our concerns that we found when we're speaking to our member states is that many of them do not have the equipment for sampling. So that's a concern. And if when we checked out the prices, mobile units can cost up to $45,000 US. And as you know, with our economies of scale, with our economies within the member states, especially now during COVID, you don't see where member states will be out there actually buying units to do the testing. For those countries that have petrochemicals or petroleum operations, then you'll find that those countries do have the ability to test, but many others don't. There was also a concern that we continually have from our port state control officers is how to confirm the ability of low sulfur fuel within the region. Under the convention, a ship can come to a port and have a FONAR issued. Now, a FONAR basically just says that low sulfur fuel was not available at the port that they were refueling at. And what our port state control officers are saying is that they have no way to verify whether that particular statement is true. And so they basically just have to take the FONAR on its merits, I guess. And so we're really trying to work. I mentioned this when I attended the EBA bunkering conference last year in Jamaica. I mentioned this to the industry to try to see if we could come up with a platform, something maybe online that our port state control officers could use to try to verify the availability of the low sulfur fuel within the region. So here is what I was going to bring up, the whole issue of whether compliance is good or if there is another issue. So just to note, this is an issue of concern. Ratification by our states of MARPOL. Annexes 1 through 5, not too bad, but if you can see for Annex 6, ratification is so-so. But that doesn't tell the entire story. When we move over to the enactment, we can see where it's actually far worse, because many states, although have ratified, still do not have it enacted in legislation. Now, why is this a concern for us? Well, under the resolution, IMO resolution, which was revised in 2019 and approved at Assembly, this speaks to the procedures of port state control. It clearly states that when exercising port state control, parties should only apply those provisions of the conventions which are in force and which they have accepted. And that states, administrations are responsible to enact the convention into full national legislation to give it the full effect and complete effect to carry out all of the regulations and guidance under the convention. So what happens when the authority does not have the convention enacted? It means that you cannot inspect under that convention, you cannot detain under that convention, and therefore, somewhat in these cases, the mission of the CMOU to eliminate substandard shipping becomes an issue because the parties cannot accept the convention and enact them if they're not in national legislation. Another concern that came up this year in discussion is the use of scrubbers. And this is particularly the use of open scrubbers in ports. Currently, Trinidad and Tobago, Bonaire, and Bermuda does not allow open scrubbers in port. St. Lucia does it on a case-by-case basis. St. Eustatius, although a Dutch territory like Bonaire, they allow it. Aruba is currently discussing the usage, but they have concerns with losing the cruise ships if they decide to forbid the use of open scrubbers. And the concern, of course, is that there is still not a lot of data out there which indicates whether the use of the open scrubbers in ports can be detrimental environmentally. And so there is some concern with respect to the use of these scrubbers within the port. And so dialogue is necessary within the Caribbean with respect to the use of open scrubbers in port to see whether it is something that we need to look at a regional level. So in conclusion, just to highlight, as I indicated before, ratification of MARPOL is quite good except for Annex VI. Legislation for MARPOL within the region is very, very poor, well, very poor. Port state control officers have an issue with the lack of available testing equipment, and we need to ensure that the low sulfur fuel is available throughout the Caribbean region and that it can be verified by our officers. And we're also seeking collaboration with MTCC to assist with dialogue with the Caribbean governments to push the enactment of the legislation and to further discuss the use of the open scrubbers within the region. So that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jody, for providing us that review with the CMOU inspection statistics and also highlighting issues such as the disparities between the ratification and enforcement of MARPOL Annex VI. And yes, we do look forward to having further discussions with you as MTCC Caribbean. Going further again, also giving us some further insights into port state perspectives is Captain Stephen Spencer. So Captain Stephen Spence has been the Director of Safety, Environment and Certification at the Maritime Authority of Jamaica since April 2012, where he leads a team of marine surveyors and inspectors in the implementation of international and regional maritime instruments. Captain Spence brings to the role valuable maritime experience. He has served on board foreign-going vessels for more than 20 years, with over 10 years as a master mariner. Captain Spence is a graduate of the then Caribbean Maritime Institute, now the Caribbean Maritime University in Jamaica. Additionally, he is a graduate of Wasatch Maritime College in the United Kingdom and holds a master's foreign-going license. In his role at the MAJ, Captain Spence is involved in port state and flag state inspections. He serves as a nautical examiner for masters and meets on the MAJ's examination board. He is also an ardent supporter of Liverpool FC in the English Premier League. During his spare time, he enjoys the Jamaican countryside, and he holds as his mantra the saying, "Be true to who you are, laugh every day, tell stories, do what you love, and make every moment count." I now invite Captain Spence, Director of Safety, Environment and Certification of Maritime Authority of Jamaica, to discuss a port state's perspective on the necessary elements for effective sulfur cap PSC inspections.
Hi, Captain Spence. I believe
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
Excellent. Good afternoon, all. And thanks to the MTCC for inviting us to present on port state perspective for the IMO 2020 sulfur cap inspections. So Jamaica is a member of the Caribbean Memorandum of Understanding on Port State Control. We have in total 10 port state control officers, and we've all been trained on MARPOL Annex VI. Our Secretary General spoke just, and she mentioned the letter of information that we have been sharing with all vessels that call at Jamaican ports. And basically it informed them of the impending, or what was impending, the January 1st deadline for the new regulations. Jamaica, we have ratified MARPOL Annex VI. However, unfortunately, we do not have it in local legislation. Jamaica is also a growing bunkering location. Petrojam, our local refinery, they do supply fuel, bunker fuel, for the industry, the ships calling, and we also have 3 other bunker players who are supplying bunkers. All the bunker suppliers do have available low sulfur fuel. So in that respect, we are considered fortunate. So it's necessary to have a robust and consistent approach to compliance that is expected right across all port state control regimes. It harmonizes the inspections, and vessels are able they're assured that the inspections in all member states will be similar. Port state control inspections are carried out in accordance with the IMO Port State Control Guidelines, which is 2019 guidelines on the MARPOL Annex VI. It's actually a publication. So what are the requirements? The global fuel sulfur limit of 50% entered into force 1st of January 2020. In addition, there is 10% for North America, US Caribbean, North Sea, Baltic, SECA areas. In accordance with ISO 4259, however, there are confidence limits, which allows samples to be 11% mm for eco-fuel and 5.3 or 0.53 for the global fuel. Vessels that have exhaust gas cleaning systems installed are still allowed, however, to use high sulfur fuel. In Jamaica, we have no legislation against using open loop systems, EGS, exhaust gas cleaning systems. So there is no way for us to prevent the vessels from operating within our maritime space if they have these systems. So here's the map showing the SECA areas. And for the Caribbean here, it's actually the US Caribbean. So it's Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. So the 2019 IMO guidelines for port state control, it provides guidance, and these are in compliance with MARPOL Annex VI, and it affords for consistency, as I mentioned earlier. And this replaced the 2009 guidelines that were adopted by MEPC 181 in the 59th session. So we applied the 2019 Port State Control Guidelines, and the provisions, they concern the prohibition of the carriage of non-compliant fuel, oil for combustion, for the purposes of propulsion or operation on board ship from 1st of March 2020. So we basically got from January 1st to 1st of March as a leeway to allow ships to continue to operate. And also electronic records were required from 1st of October 2020. Because documentation is very important for port state control officers. Okay, so when we go on board to inspect all vessels that call at our ports, we check the certificates and the documents, ensure that they're valid and that the appropriate certificates are carried. International air pollution prevention certificates are required for all vessels over 400 gross tons and above. We also look at the overall condition of the ship, generally to make sure that it meets international rules and standards. And the port state control officers' general impression and the observations that we see when we go on board these vessels will confirm if a vessel is of a good standard of maintenance. If all is well, the inspection is considered satisfactorily concluded. And we will give the port state control form, what we call Form A, and we will depart the vessel. If, however, the port state control officer's general impressions or observations give clear ground to believe that the condition of the vessel is substandard, we will proceed to do a more detailed inspection. And of course, this will entail looking at additional documents Looking at the air pollution prevention certificate to ensure that the vessel, the details on the certificate correspond to what we actually find on board the vessel in terms of equipment. We will also look at written procedures for fuel changeovers, the shipboard implementation plan, tank plans, and FONAR. FONAR is actually fuel oil non-availability reports, which is critical for the region. The FONAR, we try to ensure that all correspondence with respect to permission from the flag and from port state control from wherever the vessel is coming from is as per whatever the crew tells us. So we will interview the crew and we look at the correspondence and ensure that they collaborate. The FONAR should only be used as a last resort and should not be used repeatedly. The conditions for approving the FONAR should be strict. Of course, in Jamaica's case, we would approve FONAR for our flag vessels. So far, fortunately, we have not been approached for FONARs. Additional documents that we would look at would include the voyage records, ETDISC, the charts, and also the oil record book, engine logbooks, tank soundings, or equivalent arrangements for alternate fuel. In a more detailed inspection also, the Port State Control Officer will verify that the bunker delivery note is available, and we will also look at the details that are there and also the fuel sample. The fuel that is delivered on board for combustion needs to be delivered with the BDN, and a fuel sample is required to be given to the vessel. The BDN is kept on board for 3 years, and the MARPOL sample, or the representative sample as it is called, should be kept on board for at least 12 months. Okay, and that's what the BDN actually looks like in paper form, and the fuel sample is normally given in a small bottle and kept on board the vessel. Okay, so in situations where the samples taken indicate a higher sulfur content than that is what is noted in the BDN, we will inform the administration of the vessel and also the port state control for the destination where the vessel will be going. In Jamaica, since January 2020, we have seen no vessels with non-compliant fuel. So far, we have been doing inspections since January, notwithstanding COVID since March, and we have seen no vessels with non-compliant fuel. It must be said, however, that most of the vessels that we see here in Jamaica, we see very few vessels under 500 gross tons. The Caribbean feeder vessels tend to operate within the Eastern Caribbean and do not head north to Jamaica. So we're seeing international convention vessels, and most of them we do have a few that are trading in the Caribbean, but they're taking compliant fuel, we assume, from Trinidad or Panama in the region. That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Captain Span. Thank you for highlighting the expectations and guidelines for conducting the port state control inspections. Also for giving us that nice statistic at the end of your presentation. Moving forward, we also know that flag states have the legal authority and responsibility to ensure that the vessels registered under its flag are supposed to be compliant with all the international rules and regulations. So we know that they do play an important and huge role in ensuring compliance with also the Sulphur Cap 2020 requirements. So with us to provide some insight into flag state perspectives is Mr. Thomas Robinson. Mr. Thomas Robinson is the Chief Marine Surveyor of the Antigua Department of Marine Services and Merchant Shipping, Adams. He is a naval architect and worked for the United Kingdom's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency for 36 years, joining as a marine surveyor and rising to the regional chief surveyor. Mr. Robinson was involved with the survey, audit, and certification of a wide range of ship types and yachts flagged to the UK. He has also worked with the Red Ensign Group as a port state control officer, inspecting foreign flag vessels under the Paris MOU. He has also functioned as a marine casualty officer. Mr. Robinson was also part of the UK Hamilton project to set up marine administrations in the category 2 British overseas territories in the Caribbean. He joined Adams in 2015, and as chief marine surveyor, he carries out the same duties for the Antigua and Barbuda flagged vessels. While also representing the government at the IMO, he is also a PSC officer under the CMOU. He's responsible for monitoring and auditing of the IAT's recognized organizations. Additionally, Mr. Robinson serves as our energy efficiency focal point for MTCC Caribbean in Antigua and Barbuda. So I welcome you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you for the introduction there, Suzette. And I'd like to thank MTCC Caribbean for the opportunity to give this presentation based on the flag state perspective of Sulphur 2020 compliance. I'm just waiting for my presentation to come up on screen.
While Mr. Robinson is getting his presentation ready, I just want to remind you guys that you all can feel free to post your questions in our chat. We would like to discuss in the panel discussion later on. So just a reminder, please post your comments or questions.
I maybe hand over to Mr. Parris here because he said he had the presentation and he would put it up on the screen for me.
Okay, Mr. Parris is on the job.
Okay, can everybody see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, we're good. Okay. Okay, thank you again for the introduction, and I say thank you again for the opportunity for the presentation. I'd like to start with an apology because quite a bit of the content of my presentation duplicates what we've already heard from the two previous presentations, because it's difficult to split flag state inspection work from port state inspection work. So it'll probably be a bit of duplication in some of the details that I bring up on my presentation. Okay. Okay. I'd give the first thing I'd like to do is give a flag state overview of the Antigua and Barbuda administration, and then impact on IMO Sulphur Cap 2020, enforcement issues, and probably the main element of this presentation would be the flag state issues and challenges that we've had since the 1st of March this year, and then some conclusions to that. Antigua and Barbuda have over 1,000 ships on the International Ship Registry. However, in terms of Sulphur Cap 2020, probably around 790, mostly trading internationally over 400 gross tonnage. MARPOL, including MARPOL Annex 6, is fully authorized by Antigua and Barbuda flag to our 11 recognized organizations. Now, they are the International Association of Classification Societies, IACS, have 12 societies that they represent. Out of those 12, we authorize 11 to do the work on our behalf. Now, the way we disseminate information as a flag state is we extensive use of our website. And the first information notice for 2020, number 1, referred to IMO Sulphur Cap 2020. And as you've heard before from the 2 previous presentations, but I will repeat it, from the 1st of January, the limit for sulphur in fuel used on board outside emission control areas, ECAs, was reduced to 0.5% mass by mass from 3.5%. And the 4 established ECAs are the Baltic Sea, North Sea, North American area, and the US Caribbean area. Now, all of these areas are trading areas for Antigua and Barbuda flagships. So, and I'll cover it later in the presentation, changing from an emission control area to a non-emission control area is quite a regular function for a number of the ships on our flag. For ships operating in the emission control areas, the limit remained unchanged at 0.1% mass by mass. On the 1st of March 2020, the carriage ban came into force, and that prohibited the carriage of non-compliant fuel for combustion purposes for propulsion or operation on board, unless the ship has a scrubber installed. Now, the main type of bunker fuel oil for ships is heavy sulfur fuel oil, and some ships install the exhaust gas cleaning system, EGCS, which is also known as the scrubber, to remove the sulfur oxides from the exhaust gas to a level equivalent to the required sulfur limits. Now, that's the guidance that we put on our website, and it's the guidance that we distribute to our recognized organizations who are carrying this work out on our behalf. Now, the enforcement aspect of this is primarily through port state control. I'd just like to go back on that previous slide if I can. Let me go back. Yeah. On our website, we have information notices and circulars, and that's how we get our information out to our ship owners and the recognized organizations, because they do most of the work in terms of this compliance under MARPOL Annex 6 for us. So they play a very important part in this. Come on. Enforcement of the sulfur content requirements is primarily through port state control. Now, as you've heard before, they may check the International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate, record books, bunker delivery notes, FONARs, that's the fuel oil non-availability reports, fuel changeover procedures, and the ship implementation plan. Now, that last item there is one which we have promoted heavily towards the ships on our flag. The ship implementation plan is not mandatory, but we recommend it as a record of the planning that the ship owner or ship operator has put in place using the guidance of MEPC Circular 878 in how they've planned for compliance with the sulfur cap and an ongoing compliance. And port state control do recognize the ship implementation plan, and it can be a useful tool to verify that the ship has made preparatory actions and verifying ship compliance and meeting the sulfur limit. If there are clear grounds of a breach, then the port state control officer may carry out a more detailed inspection, as you've already heard, including onboard sampling. That, as we've already heard, is a problem here in the Caribbean. And I haven't got too many details of that actually being carried out on our international fleet. No actual reports of sampling sent to us. For ships fitted with scrubbers, the Port State Control Officer may check the system is working and operated under the approved documentation. Now, the main things that affect us, now there's four main areas where as a flag state we have challenges with this. I can pull it up. Bunker delivery notes. As we know, they must not exceed the 0.5% limit. Now, sometimes you get discrepancies between the bunker delivery note and the test report on board sample. It could be because the sample was taken after the bunker was being blended with maybe some remaining bunkers. But we've had a few cases where we've had to look into this in more detail. And from a legal point of view, it's the bunker delivery note that is legally binding under MARPOL. However, if there's a proven discrepancy, there is scope to report this to the International Maritime Organization under the GSIS, that's the Global Integrated Shipping Information System, on their website under MARPOL Annex 6. Non-compliant fuel should be debunkered or retained on board as acceptable to the port state. This is probably the biggest area of work for us. Scrubber malfunction, Regulation 5.6 under Annex 6. A fault between a sensor and a scrubber is an accidental breakdown. Now, the exhaust gas cleaning system malfunction must be recorded in the EGCS record book with details of action taken and the length of time that the scrubber was running out of compliance. The ship operator must advise the flag, and where records are reported, malfunctions are retained, and the next port must be notified. Now, we retain these records. We actually have a database of them, of the ships where we've had reported scrubber malfunctions. And we have had one or two ships repeatedly submitting malfunctions. So we have to then ask, is this something that should be looked at under the ISM, the International Safety Management Code? Is it a maintenance problem? Another area which has been mentioned before is phonars. MEPC Circular 881 addresses this issue, and we get quite a number of these submitted. Now, this is where fuel oil not available to report, the phonar, is submitted. And it has to be submitted as soon as it's determined that compliant fuel is not available in a port. Now, MEPC Circular 881 gives contingency measures, but it's really a case for port state, flag state, and the ship. They need to work together on this. Flag will often request the report from the port state to support the phonar. And we, once again, as we do with the scrubber malfunctions, we retain all records of phonars that are issued. Because the problem is that if you get continuous phonars, you have to look at in more detail. And we would ask to check the ship's voyage plan. And if they've issued a number of previous phonars, then we have to start looking for sound evidence that the ship owner operator has planned effectively to ensure compliant fuel is available at the bunkering port. And they should have documentary evidence of the communication between the ship and the fuel suppliers. And if it's a case of operational safety for the ship led to non-compliant fuel being bunkered, then that has to be documented. These phonars have to be retained on board for 3 years. Now, this is another area where we get a lot of work because a number of our ships do have scrubbers now fitted. Now, Regulation 4 of Annex 6 allows flag states to approve equivalents and accept approved scrubbers. Now, as I said, it's the recognized organizations who do this work on our behalf. So the recognized organizations submit to the flag details of the ships where they have approved the equivalent arrangements and detailed it on the International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate. And it gives details of the type and model of the exhaust class cleaning system. We then, and this is something that recognized organization can't do, it has to be flag administration that does it. We then log this under the IMO GSIS MARPOL Annex VI exemption equivalents. And that's an ongoing thing at the moment, because we have had a lot of ships that have come along lately with scrubbers fitted, and we have to document this evidence with IMO. Before I go on to this next section, I just wanted to cover a couple of things regarding the bunker delivery notes, which went in the presentation there. It's already been mentioned that they have to be retained on board for 3 years, and you've seen an example of what the bunker delivery note looks like. But one thing that came up with us recently, and it's that the declaration is signed and certified, and it's issued on the basis of the purchaser's notification. So in other words, there's no need to confirm the existence of a scrubber by the fuel supplier. They supply on the basis of a notification, and that was something that we had to address with a query we had from a shipping company. In terms of bunker delivery notes, the MEPC 884 allows member states or coastal states to require bunker delivery notes to be held for 3 years. But if there's a discrepancy, there is facilities for them to take a sample, and it talks about taking a sample from the ship's manifold, for example. So these are all areas that can be pursued when we get queries or concerns if a bunker delivery note doesn't look like it's fully compliant. Now, how do we address this for our 790 ships that are working under MARPOL Annex VI? Well, we have to do flag state inspections on all our ships annually, and we have a team of over 300 appointed flag state inspectors worldwide. Now, I checked up with the details from them, and we've not had any reported deficiencies under MARPOL Annex VI on our fleet from our flag state inspections. However, we have had 3 ships where they've had recorded deficiencies under port state control. One deficiency was non-compliant fuel changeover procedures. They were actually using the incorrect form. The ship was moving from and to different areas. And we've had 2 deficiencies for non-compliant bunker delivery notes. But that was generally down to lack of crew training and not aware of how the process works. So since the 1st of March, that's quite a low number that has been raised under port state control on our fleet. Adams, ourselves, we've been carrying out port state control here in Antigua with a focus on MARPOL Annex VI items since last year, using the letter of information that was issued by the Caribbean MOU. All the ships we looked at were visiting cruise ships at the time, and there were no deficiencies recorded. But we did log it on the port state conform that we had focused on MARPOL Annex VI issues during the inspection. Now this came up before, but if a ship is registered to a flag which is not a party to the MARPOL Convention, then it is still subject to no more favourable treatment under port state control. But based on the Caribbean Memorandum of Understanding, the letter of information I referred to before, these were the items that we checked against, and they are some of the areas that we covered when I mentioned the challenges we have. Bunker delivery notes being one of them, and the alternative arrangements, that's like having the scrubber fitted, but having an approved arrangement on board. So there were the areas that we looked at. So in conclusion, and this is something that we've tried to stress across the fleet and with our recognized organizations, correct reporting of the issues listed above with evidence of notifying the flag state and port state if there's a problem with a scrubber, if it's a problem with getting fuel oil, if it's a problem with a bunker delivery, they must report it and it must be logged and records kept on board. And if they follow the information notice on our website, then that should assist with any flag state inspections and port state control in the future. Unfortunately, I say the numbers that we've received so far have been quite low on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Thank you for taking the time to discuss the challenges and issues of the flag states, which undoubtedly would be a shared concern for many of our participants who have joined in this webinar. And moving forward, we've heard several discussions on port state and flag states perspectives on the implementation, monitoring, reporting, verification. It should also be noted that there still exists the need to understand the point from a vessel owner or vessel operator having to comply with such regulations. So basically, in order to continue trading, vessels need to be in compliance. And of course, this is a very big concern to vessel owners and operators. Here with us today to bring the perspective on vessel operators, from vessel operators, is Captain Bhaskar Sengupta. He is the environmental compliance consultant with Bernard Sulphur Ship Management Private Limited Company, setting off into the maritime industry as a direct entry cadet in Wallam Ship Management Limited. Captain Sengupta has steadily moved across the ranks to serve as a master, functioning on various ships, including container vessels, pure car and truck carriers, bulk carriers, and tankers. From 2005, Captain Sengupta has embarked on a series of shore experiences covering many aspects from many trades of shipping. He has worked as a pre-vetting inspector, as an accident investigator, navigational auditor, operations manager, environmental compliance manager, just to name a few. And now he's working as an environmental compliance consultant. Prior to his current job, he served as an environmental compliance manager at the head of health and safety, and he's been a technical superintendent and vessel manager. Such varied exposures has provided him with a well-rounded perspective into the marine business and has added value to the governing team for strategy development as well as for business growth. So to provide vessel operators' perspectives, we welcome Captain Bhaskar Sengupta. Captain, you may be muted.
Thank you, Balakaran. Thank you, MTCC and Vivian, for giving us this platform for this excellent discussion. And as Captain Sukhjit rightly said, the sulfur issue started 2008, and actually 2008 we can say the alert was given, but really the alarm started ringing onwards 2017 onwards. And here you can see this is the way actually a third-party ship manager we started working with, because in previously Ms. Jody, Captain Stephen, and Mr. Robinson already explained on their views about flag state, MOU, and PSC. And as a manager, how we have to manage all the risk relation with IMO and the local regulation implemented by the flag state and port state. Now, initially, we started with working together with the owner for selection of the right fuel, which Captain Sukhjit explained in his initial slides. And this choice was not very easy because it's depend upon the age of the vessel, depend upon how much loan a ship owner can secure, and what trade the vessel in. All sorts of problem was there to sort it out. Then once that sorted out, the next phase was modifying all the ship specific manual and also the ISM manuals, and also implementing all the required forms and checklist to meet the requirements. And finally, as Mr. Thompson also explained, that required for crew training. So we had started crew training well in advance to meet the requirement. And at this moment, 2020, we can say 10 months nearly passed. So we are going through the experience development phase. Now here, practically, we can say we are in very good zone because so far we have not came across any major incident or a situation. Now, actually, if you see what are the new change came, the new change is nothing, only the blending process of fuel is new. Earlier, the fuel is to blend basis on the viscosity. Now the fuel will be blended basis on the sulfur. What is the second change? The second change, you can say, the IMO has given guideline that DMX grade has to be used for emergency equipment. That means for lifeboat engine, for emergency generator, you must use the DMX grade. And obviously, vessel may carry high sulfur provided in the IAPP certificate it has been endorsed. That means the vessel is fitted with EGS, exhaust gas cover. And obviously, in this new change, the trump card is the BDN. As far as operator and as far as the ship is concerned, the trump card is the BDN. Earlier, already the flag state, MOU and the PSC, they have already explained the BDN is the main document which they are going to check. Along with the BDN, there is two more documents which MEPC is advising to go. One is MOPC, that is SO, the certificate of quality, which must be issued by the supplier, and the MSDS must be given, which is part of SOLAS. Now, if you scan, means the industry started scanning the situation and what actually we have found. What are the risks associated with this new change? If you see, several ports, they stopped allowing disposal of scrubber, exhaust gas cover, open loop. You cannot dispose. What is the next challenge? Fuel oil quality and compatibility. Well, this quality and compatibility is nothing to do with 2020 fuel change. This quality and compatibility issue is from long. It is nothing new. So we are not giving much priority on this. Yes, onboard fuel management is a challenge because there is be different grade. So we need to do some crew training and ship specific fuel oil changing plan. The document has to be approved so that there is no issues. Then there is another process we have to develop that is called debunkering. Debunkering is a huge process because none of the ship basically designed to debunker. The pump is not designed, the pump don't have the head to raise the oil from a bunker tank to the manifold. So this is a very big challenge. And the It is also involved with the safety of the vessel, off-hire, commercial loss, speed claims, and obviously a huge cost involved in the crew training. And it does have effect on, finally, it does have effect on the crew work and rest hours. So if you ask what is a compliant fuel? So if you see for compliant fuel at this stage, we have to comply with SOLAS requirement, that is the flash point and the MSDS. Second, under MARPOL Annex 1, we have to meet the definition, and under MARPOL Annex 6, we have to go through 3 regulations, that is Regulation 2, 14 and 18. The 14 is covering the sulfur content and the 18 is covering the quality of the bunker. This is first time actually IMO came up with a bunker quality. Earlier there was no guideline issued by IMO for any bunker quality. And interestingly, ISO have also got a bunker quality guidelines. Now, for practical purpose, as a ship owner or third-party managers, this ISO guideline is very important because it is also recommended by MEPC. That means it is a IMO recommendation to follow with. And all these 3 regulations, actually, when you fulfill, you are getting the compliant fuel. Now, when we scan, when we check exactly as a third-party manager, what are the risks? So, for this particular change of bunker, what are the risks associated with? The first thing is the pollution and spill, which is directly linked with human error and skill. So it is going under crew training, is a human element. Then we have quantity dispute. Now the quantity dispute partly is human elements because it is linked with skill, linked with malpractice, and obviously if you are not buying the bunker from a standard supplier, you can expect. So quantity dispute also can be controlled by the crew training. Third is the delays. Now this delays is directly linked with skill because it's linked with the communication. How you are communicating with the supply barge and the suppliers, basis on that the delay is how fast you are making fast the barge, how fast you are starting the receiving the bunker, finishing the documents. These are all linked with skill. But when the fourth important part is the quality dispute. Now the quality dispute, the crew or the ship has got nothing to do, because if the vessel or the crew receive the bunker in an empty tank, that is the only responsibility the crew is having for as far as quality is concerned. And then comes the bunker management. For the bunker management, the ship is fitted with fixed device like the purifier. You cannot change it every time you change bunker. So they have the fixed device to handle with that, and we call bunker management. So quality dispute is directly linked with the suppliers and from where you are getting the bunker. So if we see now, what are the agendas are coming as a third-party manager to handle this? So what is the compliant fuel standard? We need a training for the crew to make them understand what is compliant fuel. Then fuel management on board. That means we have to develop fuel procuring strategies. Fuel management on board, we have to develop bunkering proper practice to give the guideline about the BDN, to take the bunker in empty tanks, all this training. Fuel management on board, bunker delivery notes, expectation of preparation, fuel analysis, at the same time, action while calling ports, which ports they have not signatory of MARPOL. This is very, very important for a third-party manager because our ships are trading all over the world, not in us, between two ports. So if you see the bunkering total arrangement is a very dicey arrangement. Too many people involved in the chain. Too many loopholes are there for a bunker seller and bunker buyers. Too many rules and regulation and process are involved. So let us see as a third-party manager, what are the legal bindings? So what is our limitation, where we can act and which is beyond our control? So if you see, an owner signed the agreement with the time charterer, that is in BIMCO Intertank Time 80. Say I am giving an example of a tanker. It can be a cargo ship also. Just to make easy, I have indicated here a tanker. And a charterer will sign an agreement with a bunker supplier under BIMCO bunkering terms 2018. And then the charterers will guide the vessel bunker stream order. They are not going to give the complete bunkering terms to the ship. So the ship will be knowing, the master will be knowing only limited information. On the other hand, the owner will be signing an agreement, that is BIMCO shipman, with a third-party manager like us. Now, if you see the BIMCO shipment section 2, where the third-party manager have to ensure compliance of all the rules and regulations. Now, though the agreement shows very small, but when we analyze this, actually, we have to comply with ISM code section 1.4, section 2, section 6, 7, 8, 10. When we are complying with all these sections, then actually we are complying with the BIMCO shipment section 2. And resource and personnel is a very important issue here when we come to handling bunker. So let's see what is. Now, to make things further complicated, around the world, we have different bunkering code. There is no standard code, one single code. There is different bunkering code. We have ISO. We have, say example, in Singapore, we have SS 600. Then in Gibraltar, we have different bunkering code. In Russia, we have different bunkering code. Not only that, further difficult, things are getting more complicated now. We have differing bunkering standard. There is ISO standard 8217-2017. We have BS standard. We have ASTM standard. And on top of that, we have local agreements. Now, it is very, very difficult for a crew to give all these things. The reason behind this, if you go to STCW training schedule, now, if you go to STCW training schedule, only table A section 3, there is a training arrangement. There is a training arrangement only for the motorman. Even an engineer don't have any bunkering training. Yes, engineer have training for bunker management. That means how to handle the bunker, but not for bunkering. So if we come here and see to achieve the goal of proper bunkering and bunkering process, we have to walk through how many rules and regulations. First, the charter party. Second, the BIMCO bunkering terms, the bunker stream order. Then if you see, we have to come through DIMCO shipment, ISM, ISPS, ISM, all the policies which is going to affect, that is ISM section 2, section 6, 7, 8, 9. And number 7, ISM number 7 is bunkering procedure. The interesting part, when we come to bunkering procedure, the procedure is not one regulation. The procedure will cover SOLAS chapter 2, Safe Access, Flashpoint, MSD8, MARPOL, Annex 1, 6, Company SMS Manual, Responsibility, MEPC 182-59 for sampling is got. Then all this actually guideline will come in your bunkering manual. If the vessel is in US, you have to go through CFR. Obviously, if the tanker, you have to go to OSIMF. So everything, when you accumulate, then actually you are making a proper bunkering plan. And then you have to train the crew how to deal with this. Now, interesting part, the most interesting part now, if you see, there is 2 BDN, bunker delivery note. One is as per the regulation, MARPOL regulation 18.5, and the other part is the ISO. Actually, the ISO standard is much higher than the MARPOL standard. Now, why 2? It is very interesting to know why you need to know both the BDN, because now if you see the regulatory part, now this is the screen where you see which all country ratified, it is gray, which is unratified, that is orange. So there are so many countries who has not ratified MARPOL Annex 6 yet. In this country, if you are taking bunker, you cannot expect the same BDN, which is as per regulation 18.5. And if you come to a next port, which is a ratified country, and you produce that BDN, then the PSC will immediately detain you. Because on that PSC, the regulation says this BDN is as per, not as per MARPOL. So the best choice, go by the ISO. ISO guideline is accepted everywhere. Now, let us do some case study. If you see, after 2020 started, those people are operating tankers. We'll find from the TAMSA, the SIRE inspection, there is 2 major observation or NC is coming, where it says the oil record book is not filled up properly. Though Intertanko and also the MEPC circular 736 revision 2 have clear-cut guideline how to fill up the oil record book. In spite of that, there is a deficiency how to fill up oil record book. Let us investigate. Let us see why it is happening. Now, this is a bunker delivery note, and this is a from the logo you can make out is a very big supplier in Europe. Now, what is the problem with this bunker delivery note? Let's see. Now, if you see here, they have indicated HSFO. HSFO is not under ISO code. There is no correct name. How the chief engineer will insert in BDN the ISO code as it is indicated under MEPC guideline 736. Further, if you indicate, you will find the UN code is also missing here. They have not indicated the code. Let us see the second case. Now, this is another one, bunker delivery note, and I am telling you, this is, if you see the company is very, very big company and supplier in also Europe. Let us see what is happening. They supply DMA. Now, when we inspect, as Mr. Robinson was saying that the BDN has to be coded with MARPOL. The supplier must indicate what product they are supplying. Now, interestingly, if you read there, they said we have supplied as per regulation 14. But regulation 14.1 is there, but regulation, there is no regulation call for 4.A. Let us see this BDN. What is happening in this particular BDN? Here you see, they have said the bunker is supplied as per 18.3. Now, interestingly, 18.3 has two parts, part 1 and part 2. And both the part is not identical product. So again, it will create a problem. Actually, which product, and this BDN has been approved by a flag state or port state. No verification made what they are issuing. This become a problem when the ship goes to the next port. Let us see the third case. Now, this is also a bunker delivery note from very big. Now, we see what they have given. Fuel oil. You cannot write in the ORB, or also you will get an, it is not as per guideline as MEPC has issued under 736. Let us see what is next. Now, you see, this is another interesting part. And these are all example I am giving. It is in Europe in the span of last 6 months. Now, what is this here? We come, again, the grade is wrong, HSFO. Okay. Now, how to cross-check this? Now, it's easy to cross-check. Just check with the MSDS, what is written there. Interestingly, if you notice now, the next one, the bunker is supplied at 61 degrees centigrade. 61. Now,
Captain
also,
Victor, I'm sorry to intrude here, but we're approaching our time. I'm asking if you can help us to complete on time, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I will finish within 2 minutes. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. Second is, okay, the chief engineer side, no safe access, which is not complying with the SOLAS requirement. I am moving fast. This is a very important, the last slide, you will see this bunker, this particular case, the vessel was detained. The bunker was supplied LSFO 380 CST. And the fuel oil analysis report is saying it is HFO. Now, just to show you the seal, MARPOL seal number, which is identical, which means both of these are same fuel. Interestingly, the safety MSDS is showing it RMA. Now, RMA is not 380 CST. So, when not, all this document is not matching, then the PSC has detained the vessel. This is basically a chart by which you can identify which product you will stay straight run or blended fuel, which you will take, and how safe it is. And this is the IMO website, which Mr. Thompson already indicated. In this website, if you go, you can find out about the supplier, whether this supplier is supplying proper fuel or is there any complaint against this. You can go in the port wise, any supplier's name and complaint is written over here. You can download what type of complaint so that you know and you can guide your ships whether this supplier is reliable or not. Further, if you go in this website, IMO website, you will find the FONR. So far, 135 FONR has been raised, but only 6 has been approved because remaining are null and void because they could not produce all the documents which supposed to be attached with the FONR. Thank you very much from my side. And as I said, bunker quality issue is old issue, nothing new. And importantly, for us as a third-party manager, proper crew training is very important, and buying the product from a reliable source. That these two things are very, very important to control the situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Captain. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I'm sorry about the time limit there, but we just want to go quickly into the the last presentation for this particular session today. Our last speaker will be sharing his expertise on the critical role of laboratories, highlighting compliance and other challenges. So not only does compliance to sulfur requirements speak to the readiness of vessels or the availability of fuel or the role of flag and port state, but also we have to understand that there are issues with respect to the operational blends, the compatibility of the fuel with the machinery and equipment on board. And as such, we can understand the need for labs in the Sulphur Cap 2020 compliance. So to present on the role of labs is Mr. Sami Sarosh. He is the Vice President of the Viswa Group of the Americas and Europe. He's a qualified Marine Chief Engineer, and he has sailed on ocean-going vessels. He moved ashore and joined Sembawang Shipyard, Singapore, has managed tanker conversion projects. He has also joined the DNV Petroleum Services as technical manager, also as a technical and operations manager for Americas, and managed the technical and bunker survey operations. In 2016, he has accepted a senior position with the Viswa Group as the Vice President. He currently heads the bunker quality and quantity survey and the power plant operations for Americas and Europe. So I now welcome Mr. Sami Sarosh.
Hello, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so thank you very much and good afternoon from Houston. Let me fix this. And I would like to thank you. I would like to thank Captain Singh and MTCC and UTT for giving me an opportunity to join this webinar and share my thoughts. And thank you for the introduction. As you know, I'm from the Viswa Group and based in Houston. So just to give you a short description of the Viswa Group, we are serving 9,000 ships of the 650 companies, and we are the second largest global bunker testing lab and the largest global bunker survey provider in the world. What we do is that we do the bunker testing as per the ISO 8217 scope. We provide bunker surveys, we provide lube oil testing, and we provide material testing also. So coming to the agenda, the compliance and the problems. So I will be focusing on the compliant fuel and the problems and how we can mitigate that. So I would start from here that regulation number 14 of Annex VI, the compliance. As we all know, the global limit is 0.5% mass per mass, and the eco limit still remains as 0.1%. So what are the compliant options? Switch to compliant fuel, switch to alternative marine fuel, continue to burn high sulfur fuel, and obtain FONR. So my focus will be on the first two, actually continue with the number 3 also. And the number 4 has already been discussed very descriptively, so I will just pass on to that. So the compliant fuel of 0.5%. So what are the logistic issues? To select a compliant fuel or to get a compliant fuel, the trading routes are very important. The grades availability in the port, the blending capacity of the suppliers in that particular port, and flexible delivery capacity of the barges to manage changes in demand, and flexible storage to manage changes demand. So the point here is that if we are switching to the compliant fuel, we have to see our trading routes. That's the most important part, that the shipping companies should know that what is their trading routes. And it is also very evident that the trading routes are not fixed. It depends on the business availability or the cargo availability. So the availability of the compliant fuel is a big problem. And we know that the suppliers have been working on it to get the compliant fuel by just providing that straight from the refinery, or by blending it. And by blending, there comes a lot of problems and a lot of issues of technical complex engine situations. So in this case, the trading routes and the availability of the port should be checked before selecting a compliant fuel. Or what we can check before ordering a fuel is that fuel grades for your ship that your ship can use, and the operational changes, fuel grade segregation on board. That is the very important part, and the trailing of fuel handling on board. As we know that, as it has already been mentioned before by some of the speakers about the training of the crew, that is also it is of considerable importance that the training of crew is provided to handle the new compliant fuel. Otherwise, it will cost a lot of money. An accurate interpretation of the lab test results and the BDN numbers. That is the thing which when the chief engineers get the BDN and how the lab results, how they interpret that, and how they can say that they are in compliant or not. So let's start with that. There are a few types of marine fuel being sold in the market. Basically, there are two, which is called the RM and DM. RM is the residual marine, and the DM is the distillate marine. And then the RM and DM has been further divided into the groups. And ULSFO RM, which is a maximum of 0.1 sulfur, is an RM product, means that it is a residual fuel product. And then maximum 0.1% sulfur is a DM product, is also called the ULSFO. So nowadays we see that there are many products and many grades available in the market, which says RMA, RMD, RMC, all sort of things. But basically the criteria is that they are ULSFO RM or ULSFO DM. So a straight run fuel oil meeting a maximum of 0.5% limit or 0.1% sulfur limit. So that if it is a straight run fuel oil, a straight run means that the fuel which is coming straight from the refinery and no blending is done by the supplier. So that fuel is called the straight run. And if that meets a 0.5% sulfur limit or 0.1% sulfur limit, it is a compliant fuel. For example, in the South America, Brazil and Argentina, they can produce the straight run fuel oil of 0.5% sulfur. But in other parts of the world, it is very, very difficult to get that low sulfur straight from the refinery. Then they have to blend the product with other low cost or low sulfur products, products to make it compliant. So resolution MEPC 320, so delivered fuel as per BDN of maximum 0.5%. So here what I am trying to say is that if you get a BDN of 0.5%, that is a compliant fuel. But if, for example, if the port has an evidence that the port state has some evidence, or they can come and check on the spot check, and they find that they suspect that you are not having a 0.5% bunkers, then they can take the MARPOL official sample to verify that, to verify that, to test onboard sample and in-use fuel sample. So there are three things here. The one is the MARPOL official sample to verify that the limit is 0.5%, and to test the onboard fuel sample. Onboard fuel sample is the fuel which is carried on board and not in use, while the in-use fuel sample is the sample which is in the system of the fuel of the ship. So for example, if it is in the settling tank, service tank is called the in-use, and it goes to the engine rail is called the in-use fuel sample. So there are the three levels of compliance if there is a port state evidence of non-compliance. So the test result of the lab does not exceed the specification limit of 0.59 R. So for example, if you have the BDN of 0.5, that is the requirement. But if you test the onboard fuel sample or the in-use fuel sample, which comes at 0.515, that is also acceptable, where R is the reproducibility of the test method. So if our participants are interested, I can provide that resolution, a copy of that or link to that, so you can also review that. Because we have less time, I cannot go further in detail. So that is very important part for the ship operators, and also for the ship engineers and the port state to review that. Okay, so the option number 2, switch to alternative fuel. There are various alternative fuels, just like the MGO, hybrid fuels. MGO is the marine gas oil, then the fuel cells, LNG, methanol, biodiesel, and desulfurized heavy fuel oils. So there are so many suppliers and so many companies and so many refineries are jumping into this bandwagon just to get this market share of low sulfur. And as you know that MGO has been there for long, and that was in a straight run or maybe the blended run. Both were available before, but now you can see hybrid fuels coming in, which is a combination of biodiesel and the marine gas oil and all sort of things, and the fuel cells also, and LNG. LNG is also gaining some market share. So I will just go through some of the pros and cons of each of the product, so you have a better idea. So those are the pros. Simplest option, no major changes to your system, reduces SOx, reduces PM, particulate matter, and less maintenance. And the most important part is that this is available worldwide, because this has been in use for long, for many years. So MGO is available worldwide. The cons are costly. It is more expensive than the standard bunkers, and there is no reduction in NOx, but minimal reduction in CO2. And the fuel quality issues comes with the cloud point and the flash point and the bacteria. And bacteria is closely related to the MGO plus water. So this is a very negative point for the MGO. Hybrid fuels may have heard about is a combination of the various fuels, which is can be a biofuel mixture with the MGO, or can be a new product with MGO or the biofuel. Is less expensive than MGO and can meet the ECA requirements, good ignition and combustion properties, and they are also low in cat fines and other elements. But there are not many suppliers in the world, only 15 plus suppliers, and so far no specific ISO grades have been given to these hybrid fuels. The ISO is still working on it, and there are compatibility issues with HFO. As we all know that compatibility is the biggest problem when we take two fuels of different origin or different sources, and that becomes a big problem on the ship operation. And hybrid fuels are also not available worldwide. Fuel cells, this is also a growing research, and some of the smaller ships are gaining access to that, and a few companies are promoting it. So the pros are that there's no combustion, just like as you may have heard about the cars like Tesla and other cars. So no combustion, no emission. You have the indefinite fuel source, easy installation, compact and smaller. And but the problem is that the safety and flammability on the ships, availability is also a problem, massive investment, because you must have a big space for that to install the batteries and other things, and excessive CO2 during emission during manufacture, excessive CO2 emissions during the manufacture of the batteries at the battery plant. So that becomes a negative point for that. But since the Tesla cars and other cars are coming in the market, people are also thinking about the battery operated ships. And this is a ship which is running on the fuel cell in Norway. Let's see if we can see more ships like that. LNG, as we all know that, I also know that, I mean, in the Caribbean, the LNG is promoting now. The free of sulfur ash reduces NOx, SOx, CO2, and PM, and low cost. These are the very important points. But high initial cost and major modification to machinery and tanks. If we are converting one ship from the bunker fuel to LNG, it takes a lot of investment. Storage and handling more risky, and the biggest negative point is the density is half of HFO. So the more storage will be required to store the LNG. It means that, I mean, you need bigger tanks to complete the voyage. And also the low load operation and issue. Because, I mean, if you are maneuvering from into the port or in the channel, this will be a problem with the LNG. So you must have a separate fuel oil, just like the LSMGO or other fuel to start and stop the engines. So low load operation is an issue. Also, although this LNG is spreading or getting hold in the market, but is still not available in all major ports. Methanol also is, especially in Norway and in Brazil, they are promoting vessels to operate on methanol, biodegradable, clean burning, and reduces NOx, SOx, and PM, and existing facilities can be used. Need more space and twice the quantity to burn. Again, because of the density, it needs more bigger tanks to complete the voyage. Engine modification is required and has a lower flash point. And this is the biggest problem with the methanol, that the flash point is an issue and is also not available worldwide. Biodiesel, as we all know that we are using biodiesel in cars, and aeroplanes are also running at biodiesel, and the few companies and few suppliers are trying to use that in the marine also. Reduces emission and better lubricity and higher flash points, and existing facilities can be used, but the biggest problem is the acidity and the long-term storage stability. So if the ships are using biodiesel, they can have the acidity and the longest term storage stability problems, because as you know that, I mean, our ships do longer voyages for 20 days, 30 days. So in that case, the long-term storage stability can be a problem. If you bunker in one port and you reach the another port, then by the end of maybe 20 days or 25 days, the stability can be an issue. Or you can continue with option number 3 is that you can continue burning with high sulfur fuel with the exhaust gas cleaning system. Use the high sulfur fuel with maximum of 3.5 sulfur limit. So important point here is that, as scrubbers have been discussed in this forum before, but I'm not going to go in detail, but just give you a few indicators here that when we say that the scrubbers are being installed, that still we have the limitation of the 3.5% sulfur limit. We cannot exceed that even if we have the scrubbers on board. And no segregation on the ship tank is required, because the tanks, if the tanks are already in use previously with the high sulfur fuel, so you don't need any changes, and you can use the 3.5 sulfur limit with the EGCS. So there are three or four types of the scrubbers: open, closed, hybrid, and dry. And you can see that they use alkalinity of seawater, need a lot of water. The closed loop is the most favorable, where the uses freshwater dosed with NaOH and sodium hydroxide, and water stays on board but needs removal of solids. So this is NaOH consumed is about 2 to 3% of the fuel consumed. So this closed system is getting the preference over the open loop, and the hybrid is a combination of the open and closed, which can be converted into the open and the closed systems easily. And there's a market for the dry scrubbers. Also use calcium hydroxide, which react with the sulfur, but the problem is that the ship must carry calcium hydroxide to operate the dry scrubber. But these type of the dry scrubbers are in use in some of the power plants, and the ship need to carry those pallets, and the consumption is usually 50 kilogram per megawatt hour. So there's a lot of COH to be carried on board. I think I'm not going in speed. Is that okay? Okay, so these are some of the pros and cons of the scrubber also. High return of investment will reduce SOx and PM. Problems with the earlier models solved, no availability problems globally. Use any sulfur fuel, means the 3.5%. Cons: initial capex can be high, retrofitting is complicated, and if you have the old ship and you want to have the EGCS, it is a big problem, and is a time-consuming investment. Also, you need the dry dock and other off hire time to install a scrubber. This is a retrofitting issue for the ships, but as we know that, and it has been discussed in the forum before, that due to this COVID and the availability of the cheap bunkers, the companies are not proceeding to install scrubbers for now. This is on hold. So the problems as we approach 2020, many blended products, ULS distillates and LS residues are expected to be sold in the market, offering compliance, as I indicated before, that the fuel can be in a straight run or can be a blended product. So the straight run fuels are normally very good and has a good quality and good ignition properties, and the burning and the combustion properties. But the blended products can be a big problem. Let's see. The problems which are related to the blended fuels are stability of the blended fuel, the compatibility issues, the cold flow properties, acid number, flash point, ignition and combustion properties, cat fines, low viscosity, and sometimes unusual components. So these are the common problems which we have received from the ship owners, because as you know, we are the testing lab, so we get all those information and we segregate that based on the problem. And so stability is the biggest one, and the compatibility is the number two. So these are the major problems which the ship staff is facing in handling the compliant fuel. So what are the problems? Just to give you a little bit of detail here. Filter choking due to bacteria, and filter choking due to high cloud point and a cold filter plugging point, and fuel pump problems, acidic wear, and filter choking. Number of cases which are the common ports, as you know, the probable cause is the bacterial contamination. Bacteria, algae, fungal grown tests. We do all those tests to identify that. Fuels with higher VAX, we have to run those tests. And lubricity is one of the biggest problems, because as the viscosity is going down and down due to blending, the lubricity issues are going up and up. And to save the engines, there should be a reasonable lubricity to operate the engine parts. So to do testing to support that, or to provide the accurate number, HFRR lubricity test is recommended. And most of our shipping clients are doing this on regular basis to avoid any big problem. Because I mean, if the engine parts are run without lubricity, the engine can be broken down within few hours. So it is a multi-million-dollar loss. So acidic wear and the filter choking, these are the problems which are being reported by when they use the biodiesel and other products. These are some of the examples of the ULSD. Lubricity, where the lubricity has caused the fuel pump plunger. As you can see, these are the fuel pump plungers, and they have caused the fuel pump damage because of low viscosity. This is the lubricity operation machine which we are using, which can give you the lubricity testing. This is a wax deposit in the tank, and this is a very important part which I want to highlight, is that when you use the MGO, or the low sulfur products, these products, when they come in contact with water, they can cause the wax, they can create wax in the tanks. And you can see on the right side, on the left side, how the wax is produced in the ship tank. So this can, if this is sucked into the fuel pump, then it can damage the fuel pump. So this is a big problem, and most of the ships are reporting that. So that's why we recommend that the cloud point should be tested, and CFPP should be carried out before using that type of fuel. As you can see, the filters here, bacterial growth causing the filter choke clogging, and as you know that, I mean, this can stop the engine. FAME is also causing some problems. This is a mixing with the biodiesel, and the permitted level is 0.1% or 1000 ppm, but it is more sometimes, and which causes the stability and the oxidation stability problem with the compliant fuel. Okay, so this is coming to the last end, because this was a time constraint. Otherwise, I would have discussed in detail. So I just went on speed just to cover the time. So option number 4, FONAR, has been discussed here exclusively, so I'm not going to go in detail. And if, for full details, FONAR, please refer to the regulation 18.2.1, and all the information is already available there. And as we have discussed earlier, that this is very difficult that for the port state and the ship owners to provide all the legal documents to be acceptable for FONAR, but it is available as an option 4. Okay, so here we are, and we are also known as the problem solving lab, and thank you very much, and appreciate if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarosh, for adding your expertise with the contribution of the laboratories and playing the critical role ensuring that we have Sulphur 2020 compliance as well. So I know that we're a bit over the time limit. I want to direct the attention to the questions that were posed in our chat. Summarizing what I've seen here with the questions, I know that we're posing a question to Mrs. Jody with respect to the training needs for port state control officers in Annex 6 and the way forward for the CMOU in spite of the pandemic. And what I would also tie in there is what was given across here with the discussion on the reference that was made that IMO has agreed that administrations and port state control authorities may take into account the ship's implementation plan when verifying compliance with the sulfur limit. So how are the relevant authorities in the Caribbean effectively addressing these needs in the use of data capturing methodologies as listed, or using technology in our current state? So Ms. Jody, I would like to pose those questions to you. Also to anybody else on the panel who would feel free to answer as well.
Okay, well, I can definitely answer the first two that you posed, coming from Darlene from Belize. Training. We actually were scheduled to do some training at our port state control seminar this year, which obviously got postponed. So it is the plan of the CMOU to do the training whenever we're able to meet again. However, at the annual meeting last week, it was already agreed that the technical committee of the CMOU should investigate the possibility of doing some type of Zoom classes to just do the theoretical aspect of the guidance. And then whenever we're able to meet again, they would do the practical training. So we're looking at that. In addition, I believe Annex 6 is also included in the EMSA DLP, Distance Learning Program modules. So that's another possibility for the officers of the region because they have access to those modules. So they can do that as well. The way forward with respect to port state control inspections, we have provided guidance to all of our member states as to how to safely restart port state control inspections with the pandemic. So that has been circulated to our member states for, Stephen, I believe a couple of months, they restart the guidance, I believe for a couple of months. So that is already out within our member states. So it's just for those member states to review that guidance and to start phasing in the port state control inspections. And the last thing that I did just subsequent to our annual meeting last week is that the Netherlands shared with us a questionnaire that they use prior to the boarding of any vessel that comes into their port with respect to COVID. So we have shared that as well with our member states to be used as guidance so that they can get the necessary health information from the ships and then decide whether it is okay for them to go on board, I believe once their Ministry of Health has given them the sign off. With respect to the third question, I would turn that over to the other panelists for their response.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Suzette. If I may add there to the Darlene's question first is that we as an MTCC also might assist the region in building that capacity. We are still in, I mean, within this week, we will have a date for the region in January, where we might have an online training arrangement with WMU, World Maritime University, and Danish Maritime Authority, a combined joint training event specifically for port state control inspectors with respect to compliance and enforcement of sulfur cap. So we have been trying to plan that for a long period of time because of the COVID, that physical workshop wouldn't be materialized, but we are in a final stage where a date is now being finalized for the month of January. So you will hear from us at MTCC soon about the training program for PSC inspectors with respect to sulfur cap. If I may take a go at the question which is there on the use of ICT and IT with respect to the data sharing within the region, I would say there is, I mean, certainly the technology and the platform exists as we all know, those who are involved in it. I think it's more on the commitment from all the players to populate the various sections, right? So that when relevant stakeholders go onto these platforms, they can see the relevant data, right? And this has been a simple challenge for even for anybody in the sector to use such platforms where they can go and say, okay, if my vessel is going to say a said country, or even as MTCC, we want to collect a data, who are the bunker suppliers within that territory, what quality of bunkers do they have, this can be challenging. And this is again reflects a little bit on the how our structures are set up in respective countries, because even here when we go to Maritime Authority in Trinidad, they don't have a very comprehensive information on bunker suppliers, but we have to go to Ministry of Energy for that. So there needs to be that coherence built up. But as for the platforms, I think they do exist. It is just the commitment to have them up to date and a process which makes sure that the relevant stakeholders are updating those relevant platforms. I would leave it open for anybody to contribute.
Okay, if we're not going to have any more contributions to that question in particular, I would like to just give a 30-second summarization time for all the panelists. If it is that you have any closing thoughts or anything that you want to share with the participants, very brief. half a minute. I will basically start with Mr. Sarosh, and then I'll work my way back to Captain Singh, following which we need to take our picture. So I'm hoping that we will just take a group picture after that. I'm asking everybody to put on their cameras at that point, and then I'll be handing over to Captain Singh at the end. So Mr. Sarosh, yeah.
Yes, so I think it was a good opportunity for everyone to share the thoughts. Otherwise, I would have loved to come down to Jamaica or Trinidad because I've been there for many times. But due to COVID, it was we are restricted to in our homes, in our offices for now. I would say that this was a very good event, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. And if you have any other questions, please free to call me. Mr. Singh has my email and my contacts. So please, any of the participants, if any questions or any technical questions or any other lab questions or any other related to me, which I can provide some feedback, please do so. Thank you very much.
Captain Bhaskar?
Yeah, sorry, Captain Sengupta.
You need to unmute.
Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to join in this great forum and to learn a lot about how Caribbean is going to prepare and carry out different PSCs, inspection, and anybody in this forum who likes to know more about how third-party manager BSN is dealing with this situation, always welcome. Can write to Captain Sukhjit and we will give the guideline how we are dealing this situation all over the world. And obviously we develop some strategies to deal with this. We will let you know case-to-case basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. You also have to unmute.
My apologies. I just hope my presentation just gave a little bit of an insight into the flag state challenges with MARPOL Annex VI, in particular the Sulphur 2020 cap. With having such a large fleet traveling the world, it does highlight the compliance issues that come up on a regular basis. But if anyone would like to contact me on any of the things I raised, please do so. And I would like to thank everybody else who attended this webinar this afternoon. I found it very interesting, and I've made a few contacts that I may well call on in the future. Thank you.
Mrs. Jody.
Just to echo what other panelists have said, to thank you all for inviting me and having me. I hope that I was able to clarify the CMOU's perspective with respect to MARPOL Annex VI. And of course, if there are any further questions or queries, please feel free to reach out to me and I will assist as best as I can, and to wish everyone to stay safe and best wishes for the rest of the year if we're not together again.
Thank you. And Captain Singh?
We have Captain Spence.
Oh, yes, we have. Oh, sorry, Captain Spence. I missed you.
Okay. Thanks again to MTCC for this opportunity to give the port state perspective. I think we're very fortunate as a region. Well, the global scare that we all thought January 1st, 2020 would be in terms of availability of fuel. We're very fortunate. We did not get that. Generally, there is compliant fuel, adequate compliant fuel out there. And so we're very fortunate. Unfortunately, COVID came, but we were able to tolerate. Shipping has been continuing and has survived, has done remarkably well, if I may say so, during the pandemic. as a region, I think networking is very good, and it's great for this opportunity to share and to listen to the experts, especially when it comes on to the technical fuel quality and so forth. Really enjoyed Captain Bashkar and Sersh's presentation. Excellent. Thank you.
Now, Captain Singh, thank you.
Thank you, especially all the participants and speakers who stayed with us. And if I would like to summarize the presentations and my view on the situation so far, in my opinion, yes, we have been able to deal with the sulfur cap in last 10 months. But in my opinion, the real test of these supply lines or the actual enforcement will be tested once we go back to the same scale of operations what was pre-COVID. So post-COVID, I mean, as we go down, that would be the real test of supply chains. And I'm also very much intrigued or look forward to see that how the changing perspective due to the two things. First is the emission trading scheme, which EU has already done, and we have MEPC in a couple of weeks. So what pressure it has on IMO to look at the market-based measures, and if there are any which comes in short or mid-term measures, and the life cycle assessment of the fuels, how these two perspectives will impact the sulfur compliance or the selection of technologies or fuels by the ship owners or operators going forward. So that would be interesting to see. And once again, it was very informative. And on behalf of MTCC, I can say we are here in the region to assist you with any such challenges relating to Annex VI MARPOL in general, but specifically, I mean, to anything to deal with GHG emissions or anything within the region. Thank you very much.
Okay, so just the last thing for us to take the picture. Please turn on your cameras if possible.
Okay, smile everyone. One more, that's one. And again. Great.
So now that we've come to the end of our webinar session for today, I really would like to thank all the speakers for making the exchange of knowledge quite lively, sharing all their learning experiences there. I would really like to acknowledge all the participants for staying with us. I know that we did go over time, but I think that you all will agree that it was very informative and very interesting. Don't forget that this webinar is just the beginning. We're using this momentum to continue our efforts towards the global reduction of emissions. And we look forward to you all joining us on our next webinar Wednesday. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Once again, special thanks to all the participants staying with us. Even we overshoot by, I think, 33 minutes. And again, I can understand your busy schedule, so thank you very much. Special thanks to Captain Sen Gupta. I know it's like morning 3:30 there. You have to allow us difference. So staying with us, the distinguished speakers, Jody, Mr. Robinson, Captain Spence, and Mr. Sarosh from Houston. Thank you so much. And we look forward to our next two webinars. We have next Wednesday, a very good discussion on inclusion of maritime emissions in NDCs. So that is something which will provide momentum to reducing the emissions, and then some commitments from the governments at national level. And then we will have our concluding webinar on November 18th, again on the decarbonization of maritime transport, where again we will hear from some alternative fuel initiatives, alternative propulsion systems, and certainly the role of digitalization in decarbonizing the maritime transport. So I look forward to see you all again on 11th and 18th, same time and same place online. Thank you so much. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Captain Singh.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.